Welcome to this session of Through the Bible Women's Bible Study. Today we're going to look at two chapters, Genesis 27 and 28. So let's dig right in. Verses 1 through 4. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Isaac is governed by his stomach. The word game is repeated 8 times, and tasty food 6 times in this account. Before a father would die, he'd give his blessings to his sons. The blessing to the oldest son was the most important. Isaac believed it had come to his time to die. And this is his way of settling his affairs, sort of a last will and testament. One of the effects of his old age was diminished eyesight. He seems to be about 137 at this point, and he will live to be 180. So he has 43 more years to go. He just thinks he's going to die now. Ishmael, his brother, died at 137, so he may think his end is near. And in case you think the boys are innocent young men, they're 77 years old at this point. Isaac favored Esau. He was a man's man. He was a hunter. So Isaac asked him to go hunting and bring him back some game and make something. It wasn't the taste of the food probably that attracted him, but how he prized the thought of Esau as a mighty hunter, the man. Isaac insists on giving the blessing to Esau, the one God didn't choose, the one who hated his birthright, the one who married pagan wives. He didn't seem to be thinking very spiritually right now. The fact that Isaac tried to give this blessing secretly showed he knew what he wanted to do was wrong. Sadly, this house, no one trusted anyone else. Verse 5 through 10. Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. His son? Their son. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son, Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats so that I may prepare from them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat so that he may bless you before he dies." Notice she says Esau is Isaac's son and Jacob is her son. Problem right there. There's nothing that says Rebekah was spying. She might have just overheard this important conversation. She might have been in the room, but she heard and she started scheming while Isaac is out. This family is so dysfunctional and so split. Here's another case of not trusting God to fulfill what he had promised. God had promised that Jacob would get the blessing, but she decided God needed help to keep his promise. And she plans to do this by deceiving her husband. So many wrong things. Rebekah knew her husband well enough to know he couldn't tell the difference between what she made and what Esau might bring home from hunting. Verse 11 through 17. But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing. His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go, bring them to me." So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So Jacob is not hairy, Esau is. All Isaac had to do to tell the difference was touch them to know that something wasn't right. Notice that Jacob has excuses, but he isn't saying that this is something they shouldn't do. He's only concerned about getting caught. He didn't care about the right or wrong. Once he gets over this fear of getting caught, he was all in. Rebekah manipulated both Isaac and Jacob, but Jacob was a willing participant. They were plotting together. But Rebekah knew there would be consequences, and she's willing to take it all on her shoulders. Notice, who's gone to God about any of this? No one. They're leaving God out. No one is trusting anyone. Worse, they don't trust God. They plot and scheme against each other. What's sad is, again, God had promised this blessing would be Jacob's. Esau could receive a blessing from Isaac 100 times, but it only mattered if God in heaven honored it. God doesn't need us to fulfill his plan. He will use us to fulfill his plan. But we don't need to go in ways that God doesn't want us to go. We need to follow his plan to fulfill his plan. Verses 18 through 27. So he went into his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am." "Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are like the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him, because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it near to me, that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it near to him, and he ate, and he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him. And Isaac smelled the smell of the garments and blessed him and said, we'll pick that up in a moment, "So much work to deceive him." There's no doubt that this is deception, that Jacob is outright lying. When Isaac asked him if he was Esau, he said yes. That's a lie. What's worse is he brings God in on this deception. Since he knew that God wanted him to have the birthright, he's probably justifying this lie to get it. It was an ends justifies the means situation. There's some that feel that Jacob committed blasphemy by using God's name here. But God did say he'd receive the blessing. Notice whose God it is. Your God. Jacob hasn't made God his God yet, but he will need to. God doesn't have grandkids. Even under repeated questioning, Jacob keeps confirming the lie. Isaac probably doesn't believe that Jacob would lie to him over and over again. So the things to get Isaac in the mood to give the blessing: food, wine, the right smell, wouldn't it have been better for them to spend the time in prayer and worship and talking to God? So carrying on with, I'm going to read verse 27 and go on. So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, "See the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's son bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." This blessing makes Jacob the spiritual head of the family. Whoever received this blessing was able to pass it on to his descendants. This blessing is just filled with wonderful pictures of God's bounty, and we hear some of the words that we heard in the covenant that God made with Abraham. The blessing includes the wealth of good farming conditions, the water, good crops, ruling over other nations, ruling over his own brother, and spiritual protection and blessing. Talks about rain in verse 28. Rain only comes during certain seasons in Palestine. The remaining growing season, the water is provided by dew. Therefore, dew becomes a metaphor for the grace and provision of God. Ultimately, the sovereign will of God is done, as it always is. Did Jacob deserve this blessing? Not at all. This is God's grace. Verses 30 through 32. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." The timing of the story makes it so dramatic. As soon as Jacob received the blessing and left, in comes Esau. Picture how Esau is determined in his task to prepare this meal for his father to get this blessing. When he comes in, he's probably really confused. Why is Dad asking who I am? Aren't you expecting me? Verse 33, then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." Trembling, the word here is very strong. He realizes something has gone terribly wrong. The phrase could be translated, Isaac trembled most excessively with a great trembling. He is trembling. Isaac is troubled because he knows he had tried to work against God's plan. But God had beaten him, and he always will. As soon as Isaac realizes that he was wrong in wishing to bless Esau, he doesn't persist in it. He'll give Esau a blessing, but it won't be this. It won't retract what he's done. The Hebrew concept of the spoken word was such that once it was given, it couldn't be revoked. An oral blessing was as binding as a written will. He can see the hand of God in this. Verse 34 through 38 says, as soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered and said to Esau, "Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants, and with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. We see Esau in horror that Jacob had taken this blessing. But before you feel bad for Esau, you see any repentance here? God isn't looking for your tears. He's looking for a change in your life. Esau pleads with Isaac for a blessing. But Esau really only cared about the material side of things, not the spiritual. Now both these, Esau and Isaac, are so grieved when they understand what Jacob did, and now Esau is concerned about his birthright. Remember the one that he sold for a bowl of red stuff? Now he wants the material and social advantages of the birthright. He doesn't take any responsibility at all for selling his birthright. He can't really say that Jacob took away his birthright. He gave it away. Esau's crying, but they're tears of frustration and selfishness, not regret. Verse 39 and 40. Then Isaac his father answered and said to him, "Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck." This blessing sounds like a curse. Esau will eventually receive a lot of blessings. He's still due 1/3 of all of Isaac's property, and Isaac is super rich, so he's not going to go poor. When it talks about the fatness of the earth, it means he'll be a nomad. Away from the dew means he's not going to be living in Palestine. The Edomites that are descended from him will live in the driest area south of the Dead Sea. By your sword, he's going to be a fighter. You shall serve. Esau would be under Jacob, but not forever, because you shall break. He won't forever serve under Jacob. 41 and 42 says, "Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, 'The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob.' But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, 'Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you, planning to kill you.'" Earlier, Esau hated his birthright. Now he hates his brother and wants his birthright. It's pride and it's envy. This bitterness is so full of hate that Esau plans to kill Jacob as soon as Isaac dies. Remember, Isaac is going to live another 43 years. But this plan, it comforted Esau. Revenge is a comforting thought if you think you've been wronged. But things are not going to work out the way Esau hopes. 43 through 46 says, "Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereft of both of you in one day?" Then Rebekah said to Isaac, "I loathe my life because of these Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me?" Rebekah wants to send Jacob away, hoping it would be just for a few days. It's going to be more like 20 years. So she successfully manipulates Isaac into telling Jacob to leave with the excuse that she doesn't want Jacob to marry a local girl, which is probably true. Isaac would be concerned about Jacob getting a good wife, especially now that he has that blessing. Now remember, Abraham insisted that Isaac not leave the land, while Rebekah is insisting that Jacob leave. It saved his life, but will Rebekah ever get to see her son again? In this story, everyone loses. They all schemed. They rejected God's word and his wisdom. But still, through all this, God is going to accomplish his purpose. But they're going to suffer. So some ironic things here. Jacob received both the birthright and the blessing, but he had to run for his life. So Esau gets to have all of that for over 20 years. Rebekah had to stay with an old, crippled man whom she had deceived, and an older son who felt betrayed by her. Esau is filled with bitterness and hatred. Isaac is clueless, and he stays clueless. Verse 45 is, if Esau had killed Jacob, then the closest relative would act as a Goel, kinsman redeemer, and would have to kill Esau, so that in a way the brothers would end up killing each other. Now into chapter 28. This is a shorter chapter. Verses 1 and 2. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him, "You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother." It seems like Isaac finally gets it. The older is going to serve the younger, and Jacob, not Esau, would receive the birthright. He had to see the anger in Esau, so he sends Jacob away with blessings and instructions. Jacob is given strict instructions not to take a wife from the Canaanites like Esau had. Now Isaac will give Jacob another blessing. Verse 3 through 5. God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples. May he give you the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojournings that God gave to Abraham. Thus Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. So Jacob blesses Isaac in the name of El Shaddai, God Almighty. This is the first time we see the phrase company of peoples. In Hebrew, it's kahal. In Greek, it's ecclesia. In Spanish, it becomes iglesia, which means church in English. It describes a fellowship of covenant believers. He's passing on the knowledge of El Shaddai to his son Isaac. He starts with a general blessing of prosperity, then he gets specific and gives the blessing of Abraham, the covenant blessing. This was the part that Esau had despised. Jacob receives the promise of land, a nation, and a blessing. The Hebrew verb used for take possession in verse 4 means take it by force. Now Jacob wasn't worthy of this blessing. This whole mess with deceiving Isaac, it shows that. But God is going to bring great out of this mess. This shows that God will triumph over all. Jacob is sent to the east. Remember, going to the east, never such a great thing, to Rebekah's homeland. he wouldn't see his father for more than 20 years. And at that point, Isaac will be really close to death. And if he's that blind now, who knows? He would never see his mother again. Verse 6 through 9. Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan-aram to take a wife from there. And that as he blessed him, he directed him, "You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women." And that Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother and gone to Padan-aram. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite women didn't please Isaac his father, Esau went to Ishmael and took as his wife, besides the wives he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth. So Esau figures out that, Dad doesn't like the Canaanite women. So he decides, I'm going to marry a non-Canaanite woman. So he marries women from the family of his uncle Ishmael. Problem is, that's not going to make Dad any happier. Ishmael's been separated from the family. But it doesn't say he divorced the Canaanite women. So now he has 2 wives too many. Poor Esau. He's so clueless. The way he tries to worm his way back into the primary blessing is trying to seek God's favor, not his grace. It's a copycat spirituality. It's not a real spirituality, and it will fail every time. So now back to Jacob. Verse 10 through 12. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed. And behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. We'll find out that this place that he ends up being is Bethel in a few verses. He's gone about 60 miles. If he made this on his first day, that is incredibly fast. Why is he traveling so fast? Esau, he has to get away. What do you think he's feeling right now? Lonely? Isolated? Excited? This was an important time in Jacob's life. It doesn't say that he was sent with a caravan like his dad was. He's on his own, on the run. So he stops for the night. Imagine a stone for a pillow. But in reality, the same words in Hebrew are translated near his head in 1 Samuel 26:7. So maybe it was a stone that was protecting his head. And he dreams. The word used for ladder here is really more of a stone ramp with steps. It's the same word used to describe the Tower of Babel. So this ladder is a visible symbol of the real and uninterrupted fellowship between God and man. The angels carry up our wants to God and bring down the assistance and protection of God. John 1:51 says, "And he said to him, Most assuredly I say to you, hereafter you shall see heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." Jesus was referring to this dream. We call it Jacob's ladder. Jesus is that ladder. Verse 13 through 15. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. So at the top of the cider, God. Jacob had probably heard stories from Abraham and Isaac about God appearing to him. Now it's his turn. What a life-changing experience. Now his father's God is his God. He gets the promise of the land and the descendants directly from God. What Isaac had told him, God is confirming. An even better thought. God says he's with him. He's the second person to get this assurance. Isaac was the first. God will also say this to Moses, Gideon, and to all Christians in Matthew 28:20 and Hebrews 13:5. Verses 16 through 19. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at first. Jacob seems to believe he's invaded God's holy ground. He's right to sense God's presence, but he was wrong that God was only there. King David knew that God was everywhere. He said, where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? In Psalm 139:7. Jacob is putting so much emphasis on this place. But God said he would be with him everywhere. If God was stuck in one place, he couldn't fulfill his promise. The pagan gods, they were stuck in one place. Bethel is second only to Jerusalem in the number of times it's mentioned in the Old Testament. It's a pretty rocky, barren place in the Palestinian West Bank area. This eventually would be in the northern kingdom when Israel split. Jacob sets up an altar to God. Later, after the kingdoms are split, it will become what's known as a high place, a place known for sacrifice to idols. Let me back that up. I believe in Judges it will also become a high place because they were known to do that a lot. Okay, verse 20 through 22 says, then Jacob made a vow saying, if God be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. Jacob makes a vow. Vows are important for the Jewish culture. This is binding, and he is obligated to do this. It's no crossing your fingers behind your back thing. He has to do this. Jacob's relationship with God was really different from what Abraham and Isaac's relationship was like. God tested Abraham, but Jacob tests God. God already says he would bless Jacob, but Jacob has to see it to believe it. Doesn't this sound like the way a lot of people negotiate with God? If you, God, will do this, then I will do that. He's talking as if he can set the terms of his covenant with God. He was willing to accept God's promises, but he didn't commit himself to God until God proved faithful to him personally. You would think just seeing him, but no. It's his nature. Jacob is a wheeler and dealer, trying to make deals with God instead of receiving what God said would be the arrangement. Now Jacob says that he will give God 1/10. 1/10 means tithe. Jacob, the taker, will become the giver. But who is he going to give this tithe to? Maybe he means burnt offerings. At this point, Jacob is not submissive to God, but he will learn to be. It's a good thing God doesn't base our salvation on what we do, but what he did. Because he's in a rush, Jacob only sets up a pillar until he can come back and set up an altar, and we'll see that later. So, next session we will pick up more on the journey of Jacob. Thank you for joining me. Again, if you enjoy this, please click like and subscribe to receive notifications of further sessions. Thank you.